Welcome to the Welso Southern Coal Mining Museum. My name is Manfred Zirzau. I will be your guide today. I will guide you in the history of what was once one of the biggest and the most magnificent open-pit coal mines in Europe. Welcome to our mountains. I myself have worked here for 35 years, in this mine. I was a technician on the bucket wheel excavator, the big machine that you saw at the entrance. Did you see it? Yeah. It's called the Bagger 6300. When it was built in 1978, it was the heaviest land vehicle in the whole world. It could excavate 240,000 tons of coal every day. That's 5 times the Titanic every day. Yeah, no other machine could have done such a job. I know what you think of when you think of coal miners. Everybody thinks of the 19th century. Thousands of dusty faces disappearing into the bowels of the earth, never knowing if they would come out of it alive. Yeah, that existed. But in 2007, when I started working, coal and lignite, they were still providing half of all electricity in Germany. Mining was very important for this country for more than 2 centuries, until very recently. And it has had many different faces. It started in the Middle Ages, with very small coal mines, and it ended up with immense open-pit coal mines, such as this one. And here, the sky was ours. We could always see it from the machines. I still have so many sunsets and storms and clouds in my head from that time. Yeah, indeed, I have so many good memories from here. Because, as hard as it was far from hell. I came to work happy every day, knowing I would see the guys and laugh and do the hard work. Wasn't a bad job. And we were fueling the country. Who put Germany back on its feet after the European War, after reunification? It was coal, and it was lignite. Not the Middle East, not tar sands, not windmills. Yeah, don't take me wrong. We all understood that we were not on the right side of history, somehow. Trying to save mines that were polluting the air. Of course we knew. But it wasn't so simple because here, it was our life. Our past, our future. For everyone here. My father, he worked here before me. And my neighbors, they work here as well. We are all in the same union. We all marched together to save our jobs and our working conditions. And the government and the environmentalists, the journalists, they understood nothing about that. I remember very well. When I started working in 2007, they said in some newspapers that we were alienated. They really thought of us as aliens from that dirty old world that needed to end, digging our crazy moonscape while Germany needed to move ahead with climate transition. So yeah, of course I joined the union, because we knew that if we didn't fight to save ourselves, the government, they would let us disappear, with the environmentalists that were doing all this crazy stuff to end lignite. They even came here, in the mine. Yeah, that was in 2016. Vattenfall at the time, the Swedish company that owned the mine, they had put it up for sale. So the environmentalists, they organized a big march with 4,000 people and they called it Ende Gelände. That means here and no further, because they wanted the mine shut down, full stop. Can you imagine that? What if I invaded your office to tell you should be laid off? And the police, they were only trying to smooth things down and they were letting them run around everywhere. So we organized a big group to show them that it was our mine and that they had to go quick. Oh, well, nothing to mean, we only threw some bangers at the guys that had locked themselves on the trail. They did shit a bit in their pants, yeah. And then they left, as they had come, back to their marches, and we were back to our work. I don't think that changed anything anyhow. We were right. And they were also right in a sense. But, talk about contradictions. We were just at the crossroads of history at that time. There was just no way we would agree to anything. Anyhow, the mine was sold to a Czech company a few months later. And that wasn't for the best, because, they were all for the profit, and there wasn't much profit at the time in coal. So they adjusted on our salaries and our working conditions. They didn't fire anyone, really, but they never hired anyone back when someone was retiring. And so those that were left, we had more and more work. No, a lot of us started drowning at the time, because the kids and the family and the house and the money and the work, everything was just becoming more and more of a problem. And they had no answer to the real question, like, if all jobs were to go from the region, what about us? Of course, yeah, they had so many transition plans from the higher-ups, like the crazy investor that thought that it was a nice idea to use the hills to build some amusement park, high-tech, or the environmentalists that wanted to pour a lot of water in the pits to make artificial lakes. But they didn't even know where the money would come from. And they never asked for our opinion. So once again, we had to organize, to have our say and to decide what would happen with the mine. And the result is now what you can see through the windows, like the windmills and the solar panels. Yeah, that's us that decided that. And you see the garden there? Yeah, and the forest? It wasn't there before. Because we decided that we still wanted to produce for Germany and that our families could keep on working with what we would do with the mine. And with the guys, yeah, we also fought for the mine to have that museum so that we could tell our own history, our memories, our struggles, with our own words, so that all mine workers could be proud. And yeah, we are proud still today. And we often come here for the visits. I'm happy coming back here. You know, I can climb on the bagger, go on top of the giant and feel the winds. It's always filled me, you know, the beauty of it, really. Don't you like it here?
How did I get here? That's quite a long story, you know, but if you have a few minutes, I can tell you for sure. It's completely connected to the story of this hut and the free zone where it takes place, so it could be interesting for you if you intend to stay a bit longer. I came for the first times in 2012 during the first eviction attempt. But that story started 80 years ago, during the 70s, when they wanted to build a new shiny airport between Nantes and Notre-Dame-des-Landes to replace the one that already existed. Local farmers and inhabitants quickly organized together against this project, and they replied that, to them, it will be a zone à défendre, a place to defend, to protect, their land. Finally, the airport project was kind of forgotten because of the ideal of unlimited growth and the supremacy of oil were challenged, you know. Yes, until new megalomaniac politicians decided that we absolutely needed a big new airport to enter the international competition or whatever, at the beginning of the century. Because all the legal ways to fight against the project had failed, inhabitants and local farmers did something which was a turning point in the fight against the airport. During the climate camp, which was organized at the zone in 2009, they called on activists to stay and to occupy it with them. Little by little, people started to occupy houses, to build shacks and yurts, and to plant collective gardens. And the fight was not just against the airport anymore, but against the world it represents as well. Anti-capitalistic, feminist, anti-racist, anti-speciesist, and so on. When I came here for the first time, it was 3 years after this call, at the moment when all this new ecosystem were supposed to be destroyed, the first evictions time. During several weeks, state police attacked and occupied key points of the zone to control every car and person that was entering the area. We used every possible means to resist. Barricades, black blocks, clowns, glitters, or just building new huts as soon as they were destroying others. Eventually, they stopped the operation and, in a way, we won. We were still there. But at such a price. Physical violence? How many of us had been injured? A young man died during the eviction of a similar movement a year after. And psychological violence. How can you stand up when everything you build with so much care is destroyed? We were so frightened, as that created mistrust between us. I arrived in this context. It was such a disturbing experience, because all that violence was mixed with the discovery of so many approaches, so many ways of living and being in this world. I got sidetracked for a while. In October 2016, the threat of new eviction was looming, and this time the government had no intention to fail. I felt like I really had to be there. Some friends were like, no way, just after the climate agreements and its commitments, building an airport is absurd, because of CO2 emission, because it will only benefit rich people, those who can freely circulate at a time when so many people were trying to reach Europe because of the political, economic and environmental crisis in their own countries. That was important for sure, but for me at least, it was not about climate first. It was about protecting this crazy, inspiring place, this zone of political experiments. How to live without state institution, police, justice, elections, and without domination. That was the fucking challenge. It's still the challenge, and that's not easy. Let's see what happens when you put anti-speciesists and farmers at the same table, for instance. For sure, we had and we still have so many tensions and conflicts, but they are part of our identities, because they are the print of this rich biodiversity in every sense of the word, and they make this movement sustainable. So, really, how can we build new world together? How can we experiment them and prove that it is possible every single day to change the story and imaginations? There was just no way we had to take care of all that was living and being shared there. So, with some friends, we start to think about what our world would be at that time, a world that would feed us. And we decided to build this feminist hut, a safe space to welcome people during the evictions, a kind of healing space, especially for women and queer people, because we knew that manly behaviors will return quickly when we get scared. We wanted a space where we could voice our feelings and our limits, where each of us could choose his or her place and where all places would be equally valued. A space where consensus is rooted in feminist ideas about consent. It was a kind of individual and collective self-defense project to defend the personal and collective limits that we must not exceed. Never. And we did it. We were still building this cabin when the eviction started. After months of clashes, they stopped harassing us. We were expecting new attacks, but the state was never able to mobilize enough forces to attack again, you know. Then we just decided to continue, to become a welcoming place for women and queer people who had suffered violences, especially refugees. A place to reconnect with the earth, with our grounded centers, to feel our powers, bridges, evolve or die, and here we are.
Hi, good evening everyone, and thank you all for coming. The Care Center for Migrants, where we gather today, has a beautiful story full of liberation struggles, and it is, I think, the perfect place to tear down walls. Before we start, let me just introduce myself and the reasons why I am here today. I arrived a long time ago in Europe, in exile, and things were a lot different. I was coming from a desert, a big desert that was extending every day. Our lands were drying, suffering from the shameless exploitation of natural resources. And more than a land, I needed to find a safe place in this world, a safe place to be protected from the atrocities committed by men. I remember, to me, the years 2010s mean bodies carried away by the sea, overcrowded boats that never burst in any lands, and the violence of the Frontex guards. For some of us, 2010s also mean walking endlessly through the Balkans, walking with our fears, walking with the children that we bear, for the promises that we made, walking to exist. I took the road with so many others. Some had left their homeland 1,000 times, and 1,000 times had been sent back, a little bit more humiliated, a little bit more broken. Smugglers took all that we had and then left us on the sidewalk of exile, destroyed, thirsty, lost. When I arrived, Europe was thinking itself as a fortress. Barbed wires were rising, every day higher, around Hungary, Bulgaria, Ceuta and Melilla, around Calais. Borders were closing because of racism, money, fears. Nation-states were lost into their own histories. They tried to gather in order to exploit the rest of the world. Nations feared the strangers. When we, migrants, refugees, others in exile, arrived in Europe, we had to face humiliating administrative processes, interrogations, and so on. We had to fill up pointless forms. We had to detail every single fact of our lives. We had to be precise. If we wanted to obtain a status, then we did not have the right to forget anything: violence, politics, dates, numbers, places. Our words were nothing if they didn't match with the categories defined by administrations. All this was 40 years ago, and a lot has changed. But of course, walls still exist. Of course, we didn't tear down all of the wars when we stood up in the 30s. During those years, we struggled hard to force the powerful ones to look at themselves. People who had migrated, people who welcomed us, people who lived together or just aimed at living together fought against borders, against established orders. It was chaos, it was violence. Nation-states collapsed, and with them their watchdogs. Frontiers moved, borders cracked. Today, in 2050, power is still concentrated in those gated communities that have less and less control over their territory. We know they keep on declining, sick of themselves, bent under their own violence. And they just can't stand the safe territories we created between their gated communities, our free zones where we can circulate, create, live, love. The vacant territories we established were used to build care centers for migrants where people don't need to fit into categories to have the right to stay. We built and we are still building trust, confidence, hospitality. We are still exploring the infinite possibilities of living together inspired by all kinds of traditions and social struggles. Today, one of the achievements that moves me the most is that our words are enough. The administrations that used to humiliate us disappeared, rendered useless by their own contradictions. Today, once again, we will stand against the walls that they are building to lock their resources and power in fortresses. We must keep on pointing that they can't shut everyone's access to common resources and control who's in and who's out. We will protest against this new fence, 5 meters high, that they want to use to extend their territory and open a secured transport pathway with another of their fortresses. So now I will ask every one of you to gather with your affinity group and sum up the tactics, limits and objectives you have agreed upon. Remember, our main objective is for everyone to stay safe, so each pair needs to take care of one another and each affinity group is responsible for each of its members. Do also go through the security, logistics and legal checklist that we discussed over the past week, so that everyone is clear about what to do depending on the scenarios that unfold. 5 so-called fingers will leave from the center to the construction site. Each of them has its own tactic, from blockade to spiral rituals, from flash mobs to sabotage. Our first goal is to install a camp on the construction site, and we will need all our energies to do it. You know, we are here for the long run, but we have faith that we can open a new hub such as this one instead of letting them grab another piece.